We're taking a statistical analytical look here at the Cuala versus Crokes Dublin Senior Hurling Championship semi-final from last weekend. And we've run it through the GEA ProStats software, and we're going to show you some of the most significant findings. Now we're going to start here with zonal puck out analysis. Now typically as a staple, what I count, as you'll see in this table here, is the first possession each if there was a turnover. However, for the sake of illustrating a key point here, we're going to look at the first possession of the team that won the ball, which is your typical kind of GEA statistics. So if we look here, we'll see actually on a one-dimensional analysis, Cuala's and Crokes figures and puckouts are almost identical on primary possession. You'll see here Cuala had 26, 118, lost 8. Crokes had 25, 118, lost 7. And you'll see here the net figure is that Cuala scored 6 points and conceded 1 point, which gives them a profit of 19% of a point per puck, which is to say that if we take 1 away from 6, Cuala's profit is 5, over 26 is 19% of a point per puck out that they hit. Crokes had a higher profit with 1-8 scored and 1-1 conceded with a 28% profit. Now the key here is the detail, and you'll see here that we've categorized these pucks into different zones, to the full back line, to the half back line, to the midfield, and in different time brackets. Now what's really interesting with this is, and to illustrate the point, we're going to go to data for time here, which shows us all of our information up to the 62nd minute of the game, because there was a significant play in the 63rd, which we will show you afterwards. Now, if we break down the dynamics, we're going to look at Cuala's long puckouts to midfield that weren't hit inside 9 seconds. They had 16, they won 9, lost 7, scored 1 point, conceded 1 point. Even if we look at their puckouts hit between 6 and 8 seconds to midfield, they only scored 1 point from the 4 they won. However, crucially, if we look up here to the full back line, even where they weren't hit quickly, they had 2 puckouts and they scored from both of them. And what's interesting here, if you look at your expected value, which represents the percentage chances of scoring off each shot at the end of that move, it totals an 85% average, which is to say when Cuala got to play the game like they wanted to, playing these short puckouts and weaving the ball through the half back line, they actually were as successful as they ever are. Equally interesting is the 1 puckout that they went to the midfield that they hit inside 5 seconds, they also scored a point off it. So from those 3 puckouts that weren't hit long after 6 seconds, they actually had a 100% score ratio. Now the reason I left out the last one, we'll go back to all time, is that it would give you a bit of a misleading figure, because you'll see from 2 quick ones hit long inside 5 seconds, they still only scored 1 point, but actually one of those was deep into injury time, and it created this situation, a 3v2 from which Cuala almost got a goal. In a normal situation, you could expect they'd probably got a point, and that would have been 4 out of 4. Now I suppose the interesting thing in this is Crokes set out their stall to prevent these short puckouts to the full back line. However, nothing would have prevented Cuala from going long inside 5 seconds, which on the basis of this would have given them more profit. Now, so if we move on, we're going to look at firstly high balls contested and who came out top on these. Now, the first thing to point out is how this works. We haven't done Cuala's individual analysis. You only need to do one team's to get out the net effects. So if we look at this play, just to show you how it works. So Crokes played this long ball in here. So this is competed with Keno Callahan. So you click it here. So it's a high ball contested, and he won it clean. And this is why I say this software is designed specifically for GEA, that it can calculate all of this. And then you would right click up here to say strike in front, for example, if it was. Now as it happens, that was probably a loss. You could that would be down to the analyst's own philosophy on who was to blame for that, the striker or the receiver. However, by the time you've done all that, as we're going to see with Crokes, who we have done it with on every play in the game, it gives you a number of different readouts of the possession, and one of them is total contested high balls. And we're going to see quite interestingly here, from start to finish, there were 62 contested high balls. Crokes won 35 and lost 27. Interestingly, they won 12 clean, lost 6 clean, won 23 on the break and lost 21 on the break. But again, once again, the devil is in the detail, because if we look at data for time and we go just up to half time, we're going to see in the period of the game where Crokes had got themselves a 2-goal lead. Look at the figures on puck outs contested: 1-15, lost 9, and they've won clean 7 there and lost clean 1. And even if we go up to the point where Crokes had a 3-goal lead, we're going to find 28-1, 14 lost, which is really telling in that period. Now, what is interesting at that is, for all of that, despite the fact that Crokes were 3 goals up at that point, the expected value on the game was actually only a point or two in front for Crokes. So you can read that one of two ways. One is a one-dimensional reading would say the high ball allowed us to dominate the game. What I would read when you break in the expected value, that they actually, all things being equal, shouldn't have been more than 2 points up at that stage, is that Crokes actually required that midfield dominance in order to on the laws of averages, just slightly better to break even with Crokes. Now, what you're going to find really interesting is if we go from 48, which is the point at which Crokes had a 9-point lead or so, to 63, so 60 plus 3, we're going to see it completely flipped. All of a sudden here, Crokes won 4 high balls and lost 10. And that was a period in which Cuala made up 6 or 7 points. So again, you can absolutely see the link between those. And again, if you want to have a look at that there's your totals: 1 clean, lost clean, 1 break, lost break. And that can give you a readout on the individuals. There's your all-time again, if you want to have a look through those. That'll give you a readout on your individuals and who had high and low ratings. Really, Mark Howard there, 3 balls competed, didn't win any cleanly, but 3 and were 1 off his break, for example. What's interesting, noteworthy, if we go through breaches, is the fact that just coming up to half time again, we'll see Crokes. Well, there's Crokes' total breaches: 18 grade 1s, which means they were taken on and beaten directly; 7 they were taken on indirectly, which is generally a technical defensive error, and 8 where they're forced free. However, we look here, 21 to 29, just coming up to half time, 8. So you'll see whether Crokes got tired or whether Cuala started to dominate the game more in the second half, or whether it goes hand in hand with the high ball being lost. You'll see again that as the game went on, Crokes' breaches started to increase significantly. And contrary to common perception about tackles and such things, the major correlation between winning and losing matches and winning and losing periods of matches is breaches. And you'll see there in the last quarter, 16 of that total breach, 16 of their total of 33. So in the last quarter, they had just under 50% of their entire breach, which is quite interesting. Again, when you look through the individuals, I suppose 2 things that stick out is there was a number of grade 1s between 2 forwards, 5 of them, where easy enough ball came out from Cuala's point of view. At the back, what's really noteworthy here is your man marking interceptions and your man marking losses. That is to say, when ball was played in between the defender and the forward, typically defenders have a negative readout on that. They'd have more losses than interceptions. Bill O'Carroll had 6 interceptions and 4 losses, which is massive, especially bearing in mind he was marking Conor Callahan. Jamie Clinton broke even on 3-all, and Niall Corcoran won 3 and only lost 1. So they're really, really significant figures. Again, Ryan O'Dwyer, one of my big talking points in the preview, does have the highest amount of breaches. And again, if you look at half time, his figures, ironically, relative to the rest of the team, flipped the other way. Up to 29 minutes, Ryan O'Dwyer, sorry, they didn't flip the other way, had 1 breach up to half time. But if we look at the all time, we'll see there are 6 breaches there: 2 grade 1s, 2 grade 2s, 3 frees. What is interesting, however, is in the second half he had 3 man marking interceptions against 2 man marking losses. So they're all interesting figures again. But again, most interestingly is the fact that they came heavier in the last quarter. Now, what we're going to look at, just look at Lorcan McMullen. Typically, midfielders have higher breaches than other players. Damien Kelly had 0 breaches, didn't play the full game, but had 0 breaches. Lorcan McMullen 1. That's massive, virtually off the charts in terms of hurling. And when we go into possessions, we're going to see the significance of Lorcan McMullen in particular. Again, we've already looked at our total contested high balls. Here, your total possession attempts. If you want to have a look through this, I'll run over the headings, what they mean. So basically all this means is it calculates how the player received the ball, and you'll see here the ones that were uncontested or semi-contested. Crokes have very little turnovers on, which again is notable for club level. However, what we're going to look at here is the total possession summary, and noteworthy, you're going to see one standout figure there in the totals. Well, there's two, but Lorcan McMullen 14. From that, he scored or was fouled for a scoreable free on 5 of them, and he made a positive play on 5. By a positive play, that qualifies as playing a pass to a player who's in a free position to strike uncontested, or to put the ball in front of a forward. From 14 possessions to have 5 points or scored frees and 5 positive plays, 1 neutral, 1 long ball, and only 2 turnovers. They are immense figures, which give evidence to what we had suspected all along this year, that Lorcan McMullen is the standout club midfielder in Dublin. When you weigh that up against only 1 breach, that's an absolutely phenomenal performance. Other notable performances, again, Ryan O'Dwyer here, not massive 3 line breaks, but the fact of the matter is, from 8 possessions, there's no turnovers against 2 neutrals, 2 long, and 3 positive plays. That's a really solid performance. When we look down, obviously you'll see where the scores or scoreable frees came from, but 2 really noteworthy ones there again. One is Cuala and Conway. If we look here again, from 10 possessions, 3 points, 4 positive plays. Again, that's giving the ball off to another free player, or putting in front of somebody against only 1 loss and 1 wide. You would take those 2 negative plays for that. That's a fairly significant performance. And also, if we look at Ronan Hayes here, 9 possessions, scored or fouled for a scoreable free on 1-3, 2 more positives. You would take those 3 negatives against that. Interestingly, Niall Corcoran, really unusual, a cornerback, would have the highest amount of possessions, but when we look back, 7 of those were accounted for him being the extra player. So that was more to do with the structure of Crokes than Niall Corcoran specifically, though we did see from the breach analysis that he did have quite a high number of man-marking interceptions relative to normal. So there's a general rundown. Finally, you'll see what's really noteworthy is the fact that Mark Hayes was only on the ball twice. Notably, we did say 3 high balls broke off him, were won by Crokes, but without having gone through Cuala's figures, that does represent a massive full-back performance from Cian O'Callaghan, because Mark Howard has been one of the marquee forwards of the championship. To get only two possessions and 1 of them turned over is massive. But generally, probably the 2 key readouts from that, one is how the game turned relative to high balls won and lost by the different teams in the first 3 quarters and the final quarter, and secondly, the relativity of scores from Cuala's short puckouts and quick puckouts relative to their long puckouts.